I wanted to get the in and out, and I pushed the wrong button.
In 1967 and 68, I was Sister Marla, and I thought that you might enjoy hearing some conversation with some of your old teachers. First, we have with us Sister Frances Toutteney, who was, at that time, Sister Mary Stanislaus. Now, Sister Frances, tell us about some of your pleasant experiences at All Saints.
Well, first of all, I was very happy to go to All Saints, and I was stationed there from 1963 to 1967. And I always felt that the parents especially would be willing to follow the school on their hands and knees to be of service, and either to the school or to the parish or to the church or whatever, and I still feel that way. But I remember one very outstanding incident that really made a big impression on me, and that was the day that President Kennedy was assassinated. Sister Winefride came back and she whispered in my ear and she said, "Oh my God, Stanley," she called me Stanley. She said, "President Kennedy was assassinated." And I said, "Oh, Winifred, is that possible?" And I said, "Well, is he dead?" And she said, "Well, we don't know that yet. We just know that she was shot, and this happened in Dallas." So then, I'd say maybe about 25 minutes later, she came back and said that President Kennedy had died. And of course, when we mentioned it to the children, our first reaction was, let's stop whatever we're doing and say a prayer. So that's what we did.
That seems to be something that's a memory for everyone. Now, you mentioned that you were at All Saints until 67, but you're back there now. How long have you been there this round at All Saints?
This is my 9th year.
Oh my
And
goodness.
again, prior to coming to All Saints, I wasn't too sure just exactly where I'd be going. That was in 1981. So, lo and behold, whenever the appointments were given out, I was told that I would return to All Saints in Etna. And to me, that seemed kind of a dream because I had always hoped that I would return to Etna someday. So this dream really came to reality, which I appreciate. And I'm sure this will be the last place that I'll teach. If and when I leave All Saints, I'll go to the Mother House and possibly become involved with other ministries.
There's an old saying that says, "You can't go home again." So you seem to be of the belief that that's not true for your experience at All Saints.
Right, right.
And what did you do in between, from the time you left in 67 to you returned in 81?
Oh, many, many things. I went to St. Mary's in the Middle Road in 67, and I was there as principal for 18 years. And then from 80 to 81, it was kind of a sabbatical for me because I returned to teaching. And I was very happy about that because I was relieved of administrative responsibilities. And so I went to St. Mary's, Beaver Falls. And then from there, I received a phone call one day asking if I would be willing to return to administration. And of course, that was at McKees-Ross Catholic. And after prayer and consideration, I submitted. And then at the end of the 3 years, when I submitted my resignation, that was when I received notice that I was able to return to All Saints in Etna. The one nice thing after returning, that was in September of 85 when Father Mike Pavlik was still there. I had celebrated my 50th anniversary in religious life, and I was quite pleased when Father Mike had mentioned to me that the Holy Mass that he had for my Jubilee was the last Mass that he had in the parish. And I felt that that was really an honor.
You thought that much of you.
Right.
Well, sounds like All Saints was a good experience for you, too.
I think it was.
Is there any special message you'd like to give the celebrants, the reunion participants?
Well, in the letter when I had received the invitation, I believe the expression was, they will always feel indebted to me for having taught them, and I appreciate this. And I would like to reiterate that, saying that I hope whatever their future endeavors might be, that perhaps we have worked some kind of, let's say, groundwork to help to build up their morale and help them to make really strong religious decisions according to their beliefs.
Good. Well, thank you very much. Now we have with us Sister Eleanor Brunner, who taught at All Saints also in the 60s and taught the students who are celebrating 25 years since 8th grade. So, Sister Eleanor, tell us about your most memorable experiences at All Saints.
Well,
Do you remember anything special, anything in particular?
really, I love the children of St. Mary's. Or All Saints, pardon me.
It's a Freudian slip, All Saints, okay.
And I had them in the 5th and 6th grade. The most memorable thing that I can recall at the time when we went on a tour to Braun's Bakery, and then the class, both classes, did a replica of Braun's Bakery, and they got first prize 2 years in a row. And I was very proud of them. There were children who were very good. They were docile, obedient. Their parents are to be congratulated too for the initiative they gave and made the children follow the rules and regulations. I really enjoyed it. I was there 2 different times in St. Mary's, All Saints, and I loved the class really very much.
Now, when did you leave All Saints?
I left in 63 and went to Beaver Falls. We had 5th and 6th grade there too.
Okay, and then after Beaver Falls?
I went to Brunner Institute, and I spent several years in Brunner Institute. And I was having, loved the children in All Saints and really enjoyed it. We had memorable days when we made candles, rolled candles, and their parents bought them for decorations, and they were special made. And I really enjoyed being with them all.
Did you teach in the old school?
In the
new
old
school?
school.
The old school that's
yes.
now the site of the activities building.
Yes.
They tore it down and then it was a parking lot.
Well, I wasn't there for that part. I had the old school. I taught in the old school.
So you
When
could
we had the
probably-
flood, we had the flood there at that time.
Oh dear.
The water came up through the first floor.
In the school, with the students there?
Yes, the students were there, but we helped to pump the water out
Oh my goodness. Where did the flood come from?
from the creek backed up. Everybody had, even the bakery there, everybody had water up to the first floor. It was really something.
So those were good years at All Saints. Did you have large classes?
Yes, we had lots. We were pupils from corner to corner, wall to wall. But I enjoyed it, and they all were well trained, I'm sure. They always heard good reports about them afterwards, because I would try to get different, ask about them and see what was happening.
Well, now, if you had any special message to give to the celebrants today, what would you tell them 25 years after they're out of All Saints?
Well, I think if they follow the rules and regulations, and our parents as their parents were, I'm sure they would leave a very wonderful life behind, and to be honored and revered as good parents and raising their own children the same as they were raised.
What a nice tribute, especially to the parents.
Yes, you have to, I always put the parents at the top, because it was the parents who helped the children to obey the rules and the regulations, and there was never, I can never remember anything that we had any conflict with either the pupils or the parents, and they all said.
Well, that's good. What a nice memory. Well, Sister Eleanor, thank you very much for this message of encouragement and for sharing some things about your life at All Saints and after All Saints. Okay, and thanks for coming here this evening.
Thanks.
We have with us Sister Winifred, who was the principal at All Saints during the time that you folks were in grade school. So, Sister Winifred, we are very happy that you could be with us this evening. So, if I asked you to tell me about one of your most outstanding memories of All Saints, well, you can think about that for a minute, because first, I want to say to you something that you told me when I first arrived on the scene, which I thought was very nice. And it had to do with money and honesty. And when the students were selling milk and had charge of the money, there didn't seem to be a great concern on your part about watching them and making sure that the money wasn't stolen and so forth. And I asked you about that and said, shouldn't we be keeping an eye on them? And you assured me that the students there were as honest as the day is long, and we would never have to worry about anybody stealing. And I thought that was such an awfully nice thing to be able to say, because actually I had come from a place where stealing was almost commonplace, and I was really worried about it. Now, you probably don't remember telling me that, do you?
No, I don't remember that. But I do know one thing about Etna. That was my second home. Of all the years I'm in a convent, almost 70 years now, I love that place beside the one up with the Capuchin Fathers in Herman. But Etna was my home. I loved it. The people were just like my mother and father to me. When I talked to them, they were just so quiet and nice. And the very first thing that I remember of was when you came.
Oh, that's not fair game.
Yes, it is. I'm just going to tell you something about you. When you came, you looked in the library, and you said, who has charge of the library? I said, well, I look after it. And you said, well, I'll take charge of it for you. And from that time on, I didn't have to worry. But you took it beside teaching your school.
Oh, well, that was just,
I know
that was a pastime for me.
That was a beautiful thing for me, because it was a worry on me.
Well, I'm glad that I was able to relieve that worry for you.
It was worrisome. But Etna was my second home. It couldn't have been nicer than Johnstown, where I came from.
So
People there were the same. You know what I mean? On the same level. You could talk to them anytime, and they were like that.
So did that characterize your whole stay there, that you thought that even
Yes.
when you left, you still had that feeling?
Oh, yes. And I never had a thing with any of the children. They were always wonderful to me.
Oh, well, that's
Real
splendid.
lovely.
What a nice thing to be able
Oh,
to
I
say.
never did. I didn't have too much trouble anywhere as far as that went, but they were the nicest. They were calm. I never had to yell at them and tell them to sit down and behave. I just talked to them in a natural way, the way I am talking now. At least that's all I remember. Maybe I did do some things, but I remember only nice things of it.
Oh, that's good. How many years were you there altogether?
7. I
7.
taught 1 year, and then I was principal, but I taught at the same time. At that time, we had to teach. I took math and I took grammar.
Oh, okay. Until the last year, as I recall it, you were finally able to be a free principal.
Yeah, little.
The year
yes,
that
that last
the 1 year that I was there.
Yeah, you were a very big help.
Well, what happened to you since then, after you left All Saints, which I guess would have been in '68? Then where did you go from there?
Then I went to Butler, up to Herman, to Butler. I think I went there, was a Brownstown again, Johnstown for a while. And then I went up to Butler, and I stayed there till '77. And then I got so that I couldn't stay anymore. And they brought me home, and I've been here in another house since '77.
So, anything outstanding or significant in your life since then?
Well, not exactly, no. Everybody's been wonderful out here. I have really a beautiful home. I had a beautiful home to come to, and everyone is beautiful.
And how was your health?
Well, don't ask me that, because I hurt from head to foot all the time with this arthritis. But otherwise, I'm not sick. It's just that. Yeah. And everybody's nice. When I go to get a plate of something at the table, everybody comes around and one takes my plate and one takes my arm till I get back to my chair.
Oh, that's
At the
good.
table, yeah, they're all real nice.
Well, that's wonderful that you inspire that in people.
And that says, Winifred, Winnie, do you want a piece of that cake or that cake?
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, they're always, I've never yet had to look twice for anybody to help me, because the minute I get up off my chair, there's always somebody jumps to help.
Oh, great.
Yes, it's beautiful.
Now, if you had a special message to send to the students who are celebrating this anniversary of graduation from 8th grade, what would you tell them?
I would tell them to be exactly the way they were when they were little, kind, loving, and treat their children the same way, so that that generation that they're raising will be as beautiful as they were.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you very much, Sister Winifred.
You're welcome.
We have with us Sister Claudia. And Sister Claudia taught at All Saints in the early 60s, I guess, and you also taught the two classes that are celebrating this evening. So, Sister Claudia, what are some of your memories from All Saints?
Well, I remember the biggest, no, I remember the teacher, my teacher that helped me with the other class, other part of the class. And that late teacher was a musician, and or the organist who was in school. And when he went away or anything, he always made sure his class was over with me, and I got the other half.
Oh, so you really did double duty
I
then.
did double duty.
What grade did you teach there?
I taught 5th grade.
5th grade. Okay, so that was a crucial year for fractions and things like that,
That's right.
important things like that.
That's right.
How many years were you at All Saints?
I was there 7 years.
7 years, all in a row,
All in a row.
and you always taught the 5th grade.
I always taught the 5th grade.
Oh, well, that certainly was a challenge, I'm sure.
Agaponia, you know.
Oh, was she the principal before Sister Winifred? Okay, I forgot to ask Sister Winifred.
Winifred.
Oh, okay.
I was there with Sister Winifred's first year as principal.
Okay, and then after you left All Saints, what did you do then?
Well, I don't remember where I went.
Did you continue to teach?
I continued to teach because I taught in Glassport.
Okay.
And I taught in Brentwood. I came out here from Mother House, and I taught in Trenton. So I taught at quite a few places that I taught in.
Did you always teach the 5th grade?
No, I taught, started with the 3rd grade. I taught, started with the 3rd grade in Sharpsburg. And I had 76 children that year. And they were Sister Rosina's that died at Sagan. And I had them sitting two in the seat.
How? Well, I've heard stories about that happening in a lot of places. Fortunately, I never had to experience it
I had
myself.
that experience. I had that experience in Wheeling, West Virginia, and I had that experience in Sharpsburg. When I first arrived, I first arrived in August. And I had to go to in August. And I had to come home every Friday. Every Friday. Because I was in August. And if I wasn't home, Bill Mike hit him, no, Joe had to make sure that he couldn't not me.
Mhm.
And I was in different places.
So if you had a special message to give today, all these years later, 25 years plus, to the men and women who are celebrating this reunion, this anniversary, what would you say to them?
Well, I always had my classroom was right in the back where it had all these birds that used to sing and so on and so forth, and I used to always tell them that was the bird that was telling me different things when they were misbehaving or doing something. I was out of the room and they'd laugh, you know. So that's what I got out of them. I'm anxious to see their faces.
Oh, well, that will be a real treat.
Yeah, 'cause I haven't seen them since.
Well, thank you very much, Sister Claudia, for coming to this little interview and being recorded on this tape for the reunion.
Yeah.
Now we have with us Sister Bernadette, who also taught at All Saints. Now, Sister Bernadette, what grade were these students in when you taught them?
I don't know if they were the first or second grade.
They were awful little, I guess, huh? So,
Might have been first grade, but second.
okay, so what are some of your memories of teaching at All Saints School? Did you teach in the old school? Was the new school built then? The school that's standing now?
I think it was, if I'm not mistaken.
And I'm sure the old school is still there, but was the first grade in the old school or the new school? The old school was right next to the church. You don't remember. Tell us about some of your memories from teaching. Did you always teach little children?
I always taught first or second grade.
How many years did you teach?
55.
Really? 55 years. So you always were a teacher. And how long have you been here at the Mother House?
I came to the Mother House in 76.
Oh, okay. So, boy, it wouldn't take a whole lot of addition to put that all together and figure out that you must be at least 75 years old now.
A little bit more.
A little bit more.
Yeah.
So, how do you...
91.
91? Oh, my goodness. Well, you certainly don't look it. What do you do here at the Mother House now? How do you pass the time?
When I first came out, just across the lot, and I started a sewing room, and we did a lot of sewing.
Do you like to sew?
I do like to sew. Then the last, after she passed away, and then I kept up by myself. And when Dolorita passed away, I was asked to make the cabbage for the Cabbagetown fathers. So I made about 30 of those. It took me about 3 years.
Oh, my goodness.
So they were meant to be made, you know, there's great big brown hats that they wear.
Sure, for the Capuchins up the street.
St. Augustine.
Oh, from St. Augustine's,
That's
okay.
when you shit up
And
here.
St. Conrad.
Mhm.
Okay.
So that was the last sewing I did then.
Well, that's certainly enough to keep you occupied.
And now I do like them in.
Oh, I'm sure you do. Where else did you teach besides All Saints?
Springdale. I'm from Etna, I think I went to Springdale. And from Springdale went back to Sharpsburg. And then from Sharpsburg, I taught it from there on.
Okay.
But I only had about 12 pupils.
In Sharpsburg.
Sharpsburg, and I was playing house, and I went back to the Mother House.
As compared to, what was the largest class that you ever taught?
Calvert, I had 80.
80 in one room. Well, I'm sure that was a challenge. 80 first graders.
First grade.
Well, at least they were small so they could fit. So, all right, we have all these young men and women who graduated from 8th grade in 1967 and 1968, and a lot of them are here for this reunion. And What message would you give them today? What would you like to say to them to inspire them, to encourage them?
That was very kind of them to remember me and bring me, send me an invitation because I didn't know what was wrong. And when I saw those photos, I just remembered names. They came back to me. But that's the only thing I remember, were the names.
So,
of the different people that I had.
so you want to especially thank them for remembering you. Well, I'm sure that they were happy to do that because of the influence you were. If you were their first grade teacher, you were the one that got them started. So that's something to remember and be grateful for.
They usually forget the first grade teachers.
Well, I guess this group didn't.
No, they did. That's why I appreciate it that they sent me an invitation. I was so surprised when I got that invitation.
Well, that was nice. Well, I want to thank you very much for being a part of this video, also to express your congratulations and good wishes to the celebrants. So thanks very much for coming.
Thank you.
It doesn't, yeah, okay.
Well, hello, Sister Mary Paul.
Hi, Sister Mary.
So we're very happy that you could be with us to celebrate this reunion of these two wonderful classes from All Saints School.
It was wonderful to be invited because I remember a good many of these kiddos. Now the ones that had Sister Vodia, I'm not too sure of, but the ones I had, I know very well.
Well, I know you were telling me a lot of stories about them. In fact, before we started this, you were telling me about having taught some of their parents.
Yeah, their parents. Mm-hmm.
So whose parents did you also teach?
Pardon me?
Who of these did you also teach their parents?
I taught Tom Jones, Mary Ann Ford, Kevin Gavin, and Joe Zazerica. I taught his mother and father.
Did you teach them at All Saints?
At All Saints. All these were at All Saints. And I taught Eddie Schad's mother. There were some more, but...
So what years were you at All Saints?
At my first years was when I was in 1933 to 35. And then I left, and then I came back, and I was there for 14 years, from 1964, 65, till 79.
Oh my goodness. And then what did you do in 79?
Then I went to Vinaka to teach there. I was there for 4 years. And those children were something like the kiddos of Etna. When you talk about Etna's children, you're talking about somebody unique because they were really wonderful kiddos. Very, very. You know, if I remember them from 40 years ago, they must have been pretty good. But when I look at them, I think of, oh, how nice they were. Tom Jones and Dave Pilarski they were bosom friends. And as I said in my letter, I'm glad they got married and were separated. But when I go back, they are always so nice to me. When I had my 50th Jubilee and went back to see us at place, Dave Pilarski was head of the Holy Name Society, and he presented me with a bouquet of roses, as did Harms, Virginia Harms. She didn't. They told me I wouldn't have to water those roses because they were silk.
Oh,
But and then the other man, Mr. Riddlebaugh, he presented me with a check from the athletic club, and I had taught him, but they were grandchildren. And then when I came back and found out I was going to have some of their daughters and sons, I couldn't get over it. Especially with Mary Ann Ford. Her father was very, very dear to me. I think if I would have had pets, James Ford would have been the pet.
Oh, but of course we never had pets.
But I always used to tell the kids, we don't have pets, we have pets. P-E-S-T-S. And, but they were lovely children.
You know, I remember something about you when I taught at All Saints, the one year that I was there. And I remember one day early in the year, I didn't know about your history with the Pirates, but I remember one day at lunch when a whole bunch of 5th graders were coming back to school after lunch, and they were dragging all these baseball bats and gloves, and you know, one little kid would be dragging 2 or 3, and I remember one of the 8th graders looking, shaking his head, saying, "Oh, well, I guess Willie Stargell's coming to the 5th grade today," or something like that. And then I said, "Well, what? Why are you saying that?" And then they explained to me that you sometimes had very special incentives for when you taught fractions and the tables.
And bases. They were all worried about the bases.
About
you know, bases. They said, "What use is bases?" But they got onto it in algebra. We started algebra when I went to teach the 8th grade math. But they were, and then you're talking about the Pirates. I also took Richie Hebner there, and we were wild about him.
Oh, yeah? To
And
Etna.
Al Oliver.
Did Roberta Clemente ever go
And
to
Manny
Etna?
Sengi, and they kept saying, "Sister, why don't you have Clemente come?" And I said, "Well, he's not always available." But here when I was in Herman, didn't he come to Herman? And he stayed there 4 hours. He went over to the college where they had many Puerto Rican fellas that were studying to be priests. And when he was going over, I said, "Now, Roberta, remember, you should talk English," because his English was atrocious. And when he got over there, the boys came running to him from Puerto Rico, and they were talking in Spanish, and he said, "Stata zis," which means keep quiet. He said, "You speak English, otherwise Sister Mary Paul, she'd give me hell."
Oh, so he certainly didn't want to reckon with that, did he?
No.
So were there seminarians at St. Fidelis who were from Puerto Rico?
They were so thrilled to see one of their
Aw.
Puerto Ricans, you know, because Roberto Clemente was Puerto Rican from the top of his head to the bottom of his soles. He really was a Puerto Rican, and he didn't mind telling everybody he was a Puerto Rican.
So do you still have contact with people from All Saints?
Oh, yes. I keep with the Stripes and the McElroys and the Joneses and the Millers and, quite a number. Olympics. Oh, I could go on and on naming. They were always so nice to me. They remember me at Christmas and Easter, and even on my birthday, which is coming up on the 17th of this month.
17th of May,
And your
huh?
old teacher is going
Oh,
to be
2 days after the...
78 years old.
No, 78.
78.
My goodness gracious, 2 days after the big reunion.
Yeah.
Well, too bad you can't be there and have a big birthday party,
Oh,
but we'll bring you a souvenir.
I'm finished with birthday parties, you know, when you get up from this age. But everybody is so wonderful, and especially the people in Etna. When I think of it, when I first went there, we had the old school, and that was nice. You could walk up the steps to the 3rd floor, and here in the new school, we just walked into the hall, and you were in your classroom. But it was wonderful.
Well, that's good. Now, were you always a teacher?
No, I first started out as a nurse. I first started out my 3 years at Etna, and then I went into training.
Training for nurses training?
Yes, nurses training in 1936, and I stayed in there till we left St. John's, and during that time I became an X-ray technician, and then Mother Mary Kenneth asked me if I would go back into school. So when we left St. John's, I went back to school, and I happened to go to Deer Sharpsburg. I liked Sharpsburg very much. It was so much like Etna. The kids used to say, "Sister, are the kids in Sharpsburg as nice as us?" I said, "Oh, you're all nice." You know, you couldn't get on the odds with one, but I said they were. And many of the children in Sharpsburg were cousins to the And while I'm talking about that, I think I made a mistake in the letter I sent to Mary Lou Solinsky to read to you. I said that Patty Haberman married Mike Stapula. She didn't. It was her sister, Janet.
Well, we certainly have to get the facts cleared up, don't we?
No, I have to, because they'd say, "Boy, sister, you forgot." But they were nice. The Habermans were nice, and Janet's a wonderful girl, and she makes Mike a a wonderful life.
Well, now, thinking back to those great years and the wonderful students at All Saints, if you could give them any advice or any inspiration or any words of encouragement now, what would you tell them now, 25 years out of grade school?
Tell you, be sure that you keep with your faith. Because if you're not with God, you're in big trouble. You have to trust in divine providence that the Lord will take you through the rest of your life. I know many of you have wonderful lives like Tom Jones and Dave Pilarski and let me see who else, Kevin Gavin. And I hope John Butella is married and has a couple of little debaters, because he surely was the best talker and debater and sharer in Etna. Do you remember those years, John?
Well, I'm not sure if he'll be at the reunion, but if he does, you certainly have touched his conscience.
We really had wonderful times together. And we were in that little library, you know, that they made us. Mrs. Trivodi's class had a big classroom. But the next year they were kind to us. They let us go to the classroom in the back of the school, and that was it was right across from the Strife's home. And any time Mrs. Strife wanted Christopher or John to do something, she'd come to the window and rap.
Oh, dear.
And I'd say, Chris, your mother's there, or John. But we had wonderful times.
Well, that's great that you have such good memories.
Oh, I love
So
Etna.
even though you can't be physically present at the reunion, I'm hoping that this tape will carry your presence there, and I'm sure that everybody will appreciate it and appreciate all that you did for them in the past and all the nice words that you gave to
And I
them
want
today.
them to know that I remember them in prayers every day, and I hope the Lord carries them through their future as a good Christian and a loyal member of All Saints School.
Well, good for you, Sister Mary Paul. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, sister. And I'm sorry I couldn't be at the reunion, but my spirit will be there. And don't say anything bad about me, because I might yell at you.
Okay, Sister Audrey, welcome to this wonderful reunion of the 8th grade graduating classes from All Saints School, 1967 and 1968. Now, tell me what special memories you have about your experiences at All Saints.
Well, first of all, I want to tell them all I'm sorry I can't be there. Secondly, what do I remember? I don't remember too much, because it was like 30 years ago to this year that I taught this 2nd and 3rd grade. We were in the old building, and I just remember going from upstairs, downstairs to the lunchroom, watching them on a playground at that time. We had nothing to do with grades 4 through 8 because they were in the other building on Dewey Street.
So all the lower grades were in the old building,
building.
which is where the activities building now stands.
Right, that was 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade.
Okay. And you taught 2nd grade?
2nd and 3rd grade.
And 3rd grade.
Now,
so
of this group, I'm not sure which ones were in 2nd grade or which were in 3rd grade.
Okay. How many years were you at All Saints?
That year, I was there only 1 year, because from there, I went to Michigan. From Michigan, I went to St. Peter and Paul's on Lormer Avenue. Then I went to Sharpsburg for 4 years. Then after I left Sharpsburg, I went to Glassport, where I was principal for 9 years. And that was my 3rd time back to that place.
To Glassport?
Glassport,
Mhm.
yes.
Well, did you ever go back to All Saints?
Yes, I did get back to All Saints, because after I left Glassport, I went to St. Ambrose on Spring Hill for 2 years, 4 years to St. Mary's Winefride, and then back to All Saints 2 years after that, which was about 7 years ago. And I was there for 2 years.
So your stay at All Saints both times were very short.
Yes.
How did you find the people in the parish there?
My 2nd time back, I found them about the same. Like I say, it was a nice, simple parish. No people that were very uppish or anything like that. Very simple people, for which I like somebody like that. You know.
Have you had any contact with them?
Of course, when I did get back the 2nd time, I saw her sister, Kathy.
Kathy.
Kathy's been in and out.
Mhm.
And I think she was a DRE at the time. But the other ones, I had no contact with.
So, all in all, how would you describe your experience teaching at All Saints?
It was very nice. I loved it. I loved it. I just felt bad that I had to leave, that's all, because I love the people there very much. They were pretty much like people that I grew up with when I was a little girl.
And since that time, you've been teaching, and you've continued to teach.
This is my 49th year teaching.
Oh, my goodness. And where are you teaching now?
Teaching at Elizabeth Seton School.
And where is
That
that?
is in Sheridan. This year, I was at Crafton Heights at St. Martin's for 6 years. But this year, the three parishes consolidated, and we are in Sheridan at the old Holy Innocents building. And we renamed the school since the three parishes went together. And we are known as Elizabeth Seton Elementary School. And this year, I have second grade
Still.
still.
Well, having been a teacher for 49 years, would you want to comment about how it's changed over the years?
It has changed drastically. I think television and working parents have a lot to do with the way our children are now. First of all, the discipline is not the way discipline was years back when I taught this wonderful class.
How many students were in your class at All Saints? Do you remember?
That I don't remember. I don't recall. But I think it had to be near 30 because I've been used to having groups of 30, 40, 50.
I see. Well, Sister Audrey, if you had the opportunity to give a special message to the students, your former students at this reunion, what would you tell them?
I would tell them, first of all, I was happy to be their teacher. Secondly, I can imagine they all have very good jobs now, and they're doing very well. I just want them to know that I pray for them every day, as I do all my students that I ever taught.
Well, that's a lovely thing to tell them, and I'm sure that they'll appreciate very much hearing that from you. Thank you very much for making the trip in to be a part of this videotape.
Thank you.
Okay.
It keeps going now. Go ahead, we're ready.
And last of all, me. And I want to thank you also for inviting me to your celebration. I also have very fond memories of teaching at All Saints School in Etna. In fact, when I think back, I remember my arrival in the town. I moved in on a Sunday afternoon, and I remember how depressed I was seeing the convent that was so dark. And one of the reasons why it was dark was because they had bathroom glass in all the windows. And so for the entire year that I lived there, in my bedroom, I switched the top and bottom window so that the clear glass would be on the bottom and would let the sun and the light come in, and I would be able to see out. I have another memory of my very first day of school when, I had come to All Saints from a school where everyone knew me, and there was never any need for me to introduce myself. And so the first day of school, I forgot to introduce myself. And you were so nice about it, but I remember we were well into the morning when one of the students raised his hand and like a perfect gentleman stood up and asked me, "How shall we address you?" And it was only then that I realized I forgot to tell you my name. And so at that point I did tell you who I was, and then I remember a certain other individual in the room who was watching this whole process who looked up at me and grinned and said, "That really took guts." But probably my fondest memory of All Saints is that it was there that I learned to love teaching again. I had come from some pretty negative experiences, and I was wondering if I would ever love teaching again, and I sure learned how to love it there. You were a really wonderful group of people to work with. Your parents were also very supportive and very cooperative. In fact, I remember the first time we gave out reports after the first report period, I had suggested that we invite the parents in to give out the reports in person. And as I recall, we had just about 100% attendance at that. At most, there was one parent from each 8th grade who didn't show up. And I had never in my life experienced such cooperation. And finally, my message to you, well, I could repeat all the things that the other sisters said. And once again, I really am delighted to be here with you at this time. Also, the thing that I would want to say most of all is for you to stay good. You always were, and I have every confidence that you are. And a theologian friend of mine once said, remembering is a form of thanksgiving. And I remember often, and I'm grateful for all that I learned from you. And I pray for you, and once again, stay good, and have a nice evening.